The best character nobody has ever heard of. Well, if Kuno Akira's negation ability affected us the reader, that would be true. But luckily we are immune to unknown and so can perceive and as such appreciate the beauty that is the vessel of Uma known, the negator unknown Kuno Akira, better known as Ano-un. And so of course that's what we shall explore today. So if you find yourself entertained at any point during the video, then consider liking, subscribing and ringing that bell. Anyway, on with the video. Now Akira grew up with his mother living a very happy life. His mother read him manga, instilling in him a love for the medium, leading to him going on to draw his own. These mangas made his mother smile, and as such he kept drawing them. The key point here being that Akira intended for his mangas to spread smiles. He made them not just because he enjoyed drawing them, but because he enjoyed seeing the smiles his works would result in. And because fate, no scratch that, because God is cruel, he decided to destroy this young boy's life. This is because he found the artifact G-Liner, and as such was granted omniscient knowledge of the past and future of Loop 100. In other words, he knew everything that had and was going to happen in this loop. But because this is rather OP, God then decided to nerf him, so to speak, by turning him into a negator unknown. Akira though did not know this. His identity as a negator was unknown to him. Instead, he was fascinated by this new information he had gained from the G-Liner, of the incredible characters that are fighting to stop God and save the world. And what is the first thing he did when he found out this knowledge? Well, he rushed home in order to draw what he saw, not for his own satisfaction, but to show it to his mother, to make her smile, because he was sure she'd love to read about this cast of characters. The thing is though, as the negator unknown, he could not be perceived by his mother, not by anyone. The human being, Kuno Akira, was unknown to the world, and so all he could do was watch as his mother panicked, grieved, and then pray to God that wherever he was, he would continue to draw manga. However, as said by Andy in the Ragnarok arc, save your breath, God isn't going to do anything for you. And so Akira does not leave his mother's wish in the hands of some shitty god, and instead takes it into his own hands, leading to him submitting a one-shot to Shueisha called To You From Me, or Kimi ni Sutoware, and he won, leading to his manga's serialization. And through this, Akira learnt a limitation of his ability. It only made Kuno Akira unknown to the world, but not Ano-un. By writing under a pseudonym, as long as he never gave away information about himself or tied his work to Kuno Akira, he could negate his negation. And so after confirming the existence of Andy, and by proxy his visions of the future, he resolved to help his favourite characters and allow them to finally defeat God, and he did this by simply writing manga. His mother's wish was what would save the world, and funny enough, by saving the world through his manga, he also made his mother smile once again. This leading us into the events of the story proper, where Ano-un helps Andy and Fuko to grow closer, allowing them to avoid Fuko's death and give them a chance at defeating God. Having used the G-Liner to create himself a new body, he was able to interact with our main cast. But as shown when he sacrificed an arm to fend off Autumn, he will happily cast aside even the one thing that keeps him from eternal loneliness, if it means protecting his favourite characters and saving the world. His conviction to fighting God being so moving, because even though he has every right to want to kill God out of feelings of revenge, he instead is fighting for the sake of others and their happiness. He is a truly selfless character. After showing Fuko and Andy how, as they currently stand, they have no chance of defeating Autumn, he introduces the pair to the idea of Andy becoming a book and Fuko using Soul Calibur to go inside. And well, as becomes more and more apparent as the series goes on, souls are one of, if not the most important concept in the series. So of course it is fitting the character to first introduce us to the concept of souls is of course Ano-un. As well, Ano-un in general perfectly represents the rule of soul. The rule of soul, as we learn in chapter 199, being the transfer of information despite physical barriers. And well, what does Ano-un do? They transfer vital information to our main cast even in spite of the physical barrier, aka their negator ability, preventing them from doing so. Ano-un is enacting the rule of soul by helping out Andy and Fuko. Without his help she would have died and the Union would have had no shot at reconciling with Billy. Much like how our main cast now has to come to understand the information relayed to them by their predecessors, even in spite of the physical barrier of death. Back in the Autumn arc, Ano-un was doing the same thing, using the information of the past and future in order to relate information to our MCs in spite of being unknown. And with his help, Fuko survived, and with the help of Rip, Latla and Bax, her and Andy managed to defeat Autumn. and so by doing so changed the future that Akira saw when they picked up the G-Liner. This here serving as proof to Anno-Un that the future can change, that God's will can be opposed, and that a predetermined future does not exist. And although he loses his body and as such goes back to being completely unknown, Anno-Un does gain something else. He gains hope, because he no longer knows what is going to happen, so instead can have hope things will turn out great in the end. And well, since Anno-Un up until this point of the story was almost presented as a god in their own right, with full knowledge of the past and future, the ability to create anything they can imagine out of thin air, and them being the literal narrator of the series, the fact they now, after the Autumn arc, have lost both the G-Liner and their omniscience is perfect symbolism for how even the most divine seeming of beings are not true gods, and they can be defeated. Sun and Luna may be called gods, but they are not all-powerful. But going back to the Autumn fight itself, Anno-Un sacrifices his G-Liner to restore Rip's age. This loses him his body as Anno-Un. He quite literally hands over hope to the next generation. His whole life of effort in an attempt to change the future, despite not even knowing if it's possible, had finally borne fruit, and so he could happily retire, for lack of a better word, and entrusts everything to his cast of heroes. However, even as he disappears for good, he is still remembered, with Anti reaching out for a fist bump, the ultimate sign that Kuno Akira had negated God's rules, as even if he was unknown, at least to those who met Anno-Un, he was known, and remembered as a hero in his own right. And even in spite of being eternally alone, as we learn in the Ragnarok arc, he didn't leave Fuko's side once, being present right there at the round table as the loop came to an end, and the world was destroyed by Sun. But even if it seemed like a moment of total despair, like he had failed to change anything, Akira disagreed, because he saw Undead, he saw Victor fighting in spite of that despair. In the same way he had overcome the barrier that was unknown to impart information and change the future, Fuko was now doing the same, overcoming the barrier of the loops and imparting information onto the new world, so she could defeat God once and for all. And all of this would not be possible without Anno-Un. Akira's greatest wish was and always had been to make his mother smile, and in a way, by doing all he did in Loop 100, he succeeded, because if not for him saving Fuko, she would have not come by and saved him in turn in Loop 101. Not only in this loop did he not become unknown, but he still learned the information that Sun had punished him for learning in the last loop. Fuko tells him her tale and gives him all the ammunition he needed to write a cracking manga and make his mother smile. And although I'm not usually one to make daring predictions, one I am pretty sure will be proven correct in the end is that Kuno Akira will, in this loop, honour the last words of its previous version. He will write another story, and it will be the story of how they all win. A story I bet will be called Undead Unluck. And if you want to support this channel even further, then perhaps pledge to my Patreon, or consider becoming a channel member, so you can get your name at the end of the video, like Hikari Desu, Rinjak9696, Mr. Sputum, and Matthias Rowett. So with all that said and done, I have been SephTheSin, the deadly sin of geek, and I'm signing out. Stay safe, everyone.